The ocean has always kept its secrets. Some lie buried under centuries of sand. Some drift silently beneath the waves. But a few are whispered only at night, stories so heavy that even the sea struggles to hold them. Among all those forgotten echoes of war, there is one story that rises above the rest. A story carved into the salting silence of the Pacific. A story of men who vanished into the darkness, swallowed not just by water, but by fate itself. It begins on a warm night in July 1945, when the Pacific sky was calm, the stars shining bright, and the war was nearing its end. The men of the USS Indianapolis believed they were heading home soon. They joked, they smoked, they leaned against the steel rails and tasted freedom in the humid air. None of them knew, none of them could even imagine that within minutes, their world would break open beneath their feet. They had just completed a mission so secret that most of the men on board had no idea what they had carried. A mission that would soon change the future of warfare forever. But the ocean does not care about victory or secrets. It cares only about what is taken from each and what must be paid in return. When the explosion came, it cut through the night like a blade through paper. Metal screamed, water surged, and the ship that had carried 1,196 souls began to die faster than any of them could understand. Some jumped, some never had the chance. As the Indianapolis slipped beneath the surface, the sea swallowed their cries until only the quiet remained. But the true horror did not begin when the ship sank. It began after. In the darkness of that open water, hundreds of men floated alone under a burning sun, a pitiless sky. They had no food, no fresh water, no signal, no rescue, just each other in the unseen shape of death circling beneath them. For 5 days, they drifted. For 5 days, they fought thirst, madness, in the shadows below. For 5 days, the silence of the ocean was broken only by screams that never made it to shore. The Pacific was quiet. The night it happened so quiet that the men of the USS Indianapolis felt almost at peace. The war was nearing its end. The sky was clear, and the ship moved like a shadow across the water. They had just delivered a cargo so secret that most of the crew would never know what they carried. All they knew was that home felt close. But the ocean does not warn. It does not forgive.
Without a single hint, the night split apart. 2 explosions tore through the steel belly of the ship, and in just 12 minutes, the Indianapolis was gone. Hundreds of men were thrown into the dark water, clinging to life as the last echo of their ship faded beneath the waves. They thought the worst was over. They were wrong. For 5 days, they floated with no food, no water, and death circling beneath them. Sun above, sharks below, the will to survive in between. At night, the USS Indianapolis cut through the Pacific. The sea carried the kind of calm that made men forget they were at war. The air was warm, heavy with the scent of salt and engine smoke, and the deck hummed softly beneath their boots. After days of silence and tension from a mission they could not speak of, the crew finally breathed a little easier. They were heading toward Lady, toward familiar waters, toward the promise of rest. Most of them did not know what had been locked inside the ship's belly. Days earlier, they only knew the officers spoke in whispers. Guards stood stiff at sealed compartments, and the voyage felt heavier than usual. But now that the mysterious cargo was delivered, the atmosphere had lightened. Laughter drifted between groups of sailors as they leaned against the rails, talking about home, about the last months of the war, about the hope that maybe soon this long nightmare would end. Deep inside the ship, the engines throbbed with steady confidence. The Indianapolis was a proud cruiser, scarred from earlier battles, but strong. Men trusted her. She had carried them through fire before. She could carry them home again. But beneath the surface, unseen and unheard, something else moved. Miles away, a Japanese submarine, I-58, drifted like a hunting shadow. Its commander watched the sonar with cold focus. The ocean was wide, but predators in wartime learned how to read its patterns: engine tremors, vibrations, metal slicing water. And on that night, the Indianapolis was a glowing target in the darkness. On board the cruiser, most of the men were preparing for sleep. Some wrote letters to families they missed. Some cleaned their gear. Others lay in their bunks, staring at the ceiling, letting the low hum of the ship lull them toward dreams. A few remained on watch, scanning the horizon. Though the calm night made danger feel distant, almost impossible, the seconds drifted quietly toward midnight. Then the ocean shifted. At first, it was nothing more than a tremor, faint disturbance in the deep. But in the conning tower of the submarine, a decision was made. A command was given. A torpedo slid into place. And in that exact moment, as the Indianapolis glided through the calm Pacific, no one aboard knew that history had already begun to close around them. The sea held its breath. The torpedo left the tube, and the nightmare rushed toward them in the dark. When the first torpedo struck the USS Indianapolis, the night exploded into fire. Metal tore apart. Men were thrown across corridors, and alarms wailed through the ship. Before they could understand what had happened, the second torpedo hit, ripping through the fuel tanks and flooding entire compartments instantly. The ship began to list, water roaring in like a beast, unleashed from the deep. Lights flickered, power died, and the cruiser that had survived years of war now groaned like a dying giant. Officers shouted orders no one could hear. Men stumbled through smoke-filled hallways, and in less than 12 minutes, the Indianapolis disappeared beneath the black water. Hundreds of sailors found themselves floating in the vast Pacific, clinging to debris, calling for shipmates who never surfaced. Darkness surrounded them. The true nightmare had begun. By sunrise, the survivors floated in scattered groups. They had no rafts, no food, no fresh water, only life jackets and hope. The sun scorched them by day. The cold bit into their bones by night. Salt water cracked their lips, burned their eyes, and soon hallucinations crept into their minds. Some swore they saw islands. Some tried to swim toward visions that didn't exist. Then came the sharks. At first, they circled quietly, brushing against legs beneath the surface. But as the hours passed, the attacks began. A scream would rise, the water would churn red, then silence would fall again. The men learned not to thrash, not to drift alone, not to look down. They clung together in tight circles, praying for dawn, praying for rescue, praying simply to make it one more hour. By the second day, dehydration drove many to madness. Some drank the seawater and lost their minds within minutes. They raved, laughed, cried, then slipped under the waves. Others whispered to friends who were no longer alive, refusing to let go of the bodies beside them. On the third day, storms rolled in. Waves tossed the survivors like rag dolls, scattering them even farther apart. The ocean felt endless, cruel and indifferent. Men who had fought through battles across the Pacific now fought only to keep their heads above water. No one knew that Indianapolis was missing. No distress signal had been received. No search planes had been launched. The ocean had swallowed the ship and its cries with perfect silence. On the fourth day, many could no longer speak. Their throats were raw, their bodies weak, their minds drifting between consciousness and dreams. The sea beneath them still stirred with shadows. Then, on the fifth day, a miracle happened. A patrol plane flying a routine mission spotted a strange patch on the ocean. Dozens of men, waving, barely alive. The pilot radioed for help instantly, and within hours, rescue ships began pulling survivors from the water. When the last man was lifted aboard, only 316 remained alive, out of 1,196. As the sun set that evening, the Pacific looked peaceful again.